Or before they started the restoration, what's what, you've been out there now? What's the big difference?
Well, there's just a lot more pinnable space that we can place a whole location where it's reasonable and it works. And that's just the natural evolution of classic courses. It's pretty consistent with that. The greens, tend to pile up on the edges with decades and decades of bunker shots, and mowing patterns can slightly evolve over time, get a little bit smaller, particularly when you have a golf course with so many trees throughout its past. And so I think what we have now is just a restored version of what it used to be, with all that square footage. And what that gives you is just a lot more options from a whole location standpoint to present a little bit more variety during the 4 days of the competition.
As the course, I know it has changed a lot. But I remember during the amateur, guys that were on teeing up 18, they were going down 15 for better angles. Is that going to happen with the pros?
Cross-country golf, as we like to call it, it could happen. I think it's a little less desirable to do it for the U.S. Open because our mowing height's probably going to be a little bit higher for the rough. And I think that will definitely play a part in players' decision to do that or not do that. It is kind of a challenge that you get presented with when you take out trees. It is okay. Well, maybe I'll go over there. But we've tried to be thoughtful with some areas of the golf course that don't at all come into play on the hole you're playing. But if you're thinking about coming in from another hole, we've made a few very minor adjustments to make those shots harder and more penal.
Did you play prior to the restoration, and how much has the course changed if you've played it since?
The biggest change in my history with this place is the putting greens. They're just night and day is very much the wrong word, because the spirit of all these putting greens is still very much the same. As Mike alluded to, the kind of interior portions of the putting greens are the same, but the edges are just so much different, and different in a good way. Just like I said, it just opens up the options you have from a setup standpoint to push hole locations into pockets that you couldn't before.
Speaking of setup, we've seen 5 under win here, we've seen 5 over win here. As a setup guy, is there an ideal score you'd like to see?
No, there's not, and I think that's a little bit of a misconception with the USGA. I think we look at score as a metric, but not like the metric. I think at the end of the day, we really appreciate our role with conducting a national championship, and we want to make it challenging to live up to that standard. But it's also got to be right. We're not going to manage our setup based on the leaderboard, right? Or based on what the leading score is after day one. Formulate a plan, stick to it, believe in it, trust it. We've had amazing U.S. Opens as of late, following that sort of philosophy. So, same approach here. I think at the end of the day, a U.S. Open means that a par is a good score on every hole. It doesn't mean you can't make birdie. It doesn't mean you won't make bogey. I think a place like Oakmont, I could see this place bogeying you to death. You get a little off with the driver, you start driving it in the fairway bunkers, you're laying up all the time. It's that type of a test. But no, there's no magic number. We wanted to play appropriately difficult for what a national championship should be.
Challenging, but fair and playable.
Totally, yeah.
You talked to Will about your role kind of with the players, but just more so, what were the conversations like with Jason Gore before that maybe helped and challenged you to build upon what he had already done?
Yeah, Jason and I are close. It's just been awesome to have him in my corner and sharing his experience with me, having filled this role before me. And he's come along with us on a few setup days during U.S. Open week the last 2 years, which has been great. As much as anything, it just instills a vote of confidence in me, just being alongside of him and hearing his perspective. And no, I've taken a lot away from my conversation with Jason and our friendship that's been in both of our lives for now quite a long time. Haven't played together, played against each other, and now in golf, but in a different way.
What's it been like learning the legacy of this course, the phone's name, what it means to these members and to this course and to this community?
It's cool. I mean, as a golf purist, like, I feel like I would have liked the Phones family. Like, they just love difficult golf. That's always been my sort of style. The U.S. Open has always been my favorite championship to play because it's so difficult. It asks so much of you, and I think that's what Oakmont does every day. And so it's kind of my type of place, if that makes sense. And so it's been fun getting to know the staff here, membership, the golf course, reading up on the Phones family and kind of their point of view on things. I just think it's a magnificent place.
How many times have you played here, and what was the highlight so far for you?
I've only played here once. I feel like I've played here a dozen times with how many times I've walked the golf course. I plan to play a lot more in between now and June. But my first reaction was, this place is really hard. You have room to drive it, but you've got to drive it well. And if you don't, you're by and large not going to reach the putting greens in regulation. And so, again, that's where I go back to, like, this place can really bogey you to death. Like, if you start getting a little bit off with the driver, and it's just a brutal test, hole after hole.
Favorite hole?
Oh man, it's tough. 3 is incredible. Church pews, infinity look on the green, super challenging. Just love the look of that hole from the tee. It's what's there. There's nothing quirky about it. You got to hit a great tee shot. You got to hit a great second shot with good distance control. So 3 is definitely up there, but I mean, 18 is spectacular, just like quintessential U.S. Open finishing hole. There's no bad hole out here. That's the good thing. Hole after hole is just a great test.
Have you had Permane Brothers yet?
No. I've had Oakmont Bakery, but no.
Go to at Oakmont Bakery?
Well.
Loaded question, right?
No, I get a salad. That's why I'm laughing. But the last time I was here, I did get the ice cream cookie sandwich. So that was pretty strong.
I have to ask. We talked about it when we were on. I think it was 3. We were talking about the 2014 Memorial Tournament and the putt. Just, you laughed as soon as I mentioned it. It's been 10 years. It's been viral. Just, what do you remember from the putt that didn't want to go in but oscillated its way into finding a way in?
It's funny to me that it still has legs. Like, it still seems to show up every year on social media and around the Memorial Tournament's time. And yeah, I mean, just looking back, like, I was just having the worst day, playing terrible. I was in the final group at the Memorial, which was a great spot to be in, but playing bad. And I hit that putt, and I think you saw my kind of pent up frustration finding its way out with the fact that ball wasn't going to go in. And it was really chaotic because it was so loud. There's a big grandstand to the right, big hospitality area, and I was playing with Bubba Watson. He's yelling at me over all the noise. Hey, don't putt it. It's still moving. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, I know I only have a certain amount of time, but it's also still moving. So, like, I just kind of froze. I didn't know what to do. Sure enough, it falls in. Thankfully, no penalty. I had shot 78 already. It's better than 79. But just, yeah, funny to me that it still has legs, because it was just kind of this, like, interesting fluke thing that happened. And unfortunately, it reminds me of, like, playing bad that day more than anything. But I guess it is a pretty interesting video.